All right guys, welcome back. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we're going to be going over the history of Swiss small arms weaponry. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go way back and go as far forward as we can. Let's do it. All right guys, well we're going to be going through the history of Swiss small arms, and primarily what we're going to be discussing are rifles and handguns. All the way up from before the turn of the century up through around 1958 is as far as we're going to go here today. But, you know, it's always fun to break out the Swiss Condor. That was a vintage Swiss Condor motorcycle produced in 1974. And we were using a Swiss, at least the, the recoil system in the Vector is Swiss design. So we thought we'd have a little fun with the Chris Vector there. So Edelweiss was able to get me a couple of guns here to show off that I don't have in my collection. So this is a combination of rifles and pistols that I own and ones that are kind of loaners just for demonstrative purposes to show you guys the lineage of all of these Swiss firearms. And guys, one of the most interesting things about the Swiss in terms of their small arms development is in a lot of cases, you know, they've always been a neutral nation. So that means that they've always been able to kind of take their time and really design like the proper gun for them and what they like. And the engineering that went into the development of these firearms is so cool. And it is such, it's worthy of study, okay? And that's is one thing that has always really, you know, just sort of driven me to Swiss firearms. I've always been a Swiss rifle and pistol fanatic because, one, the production numbers are definitely a lot lower than a lot of the other guns that are produced all around the world. I mean, you look at the Mosin Nagants, you look at Mauser rifles and things like that, which were produced in the millions and millions of different units. But the Swiss rifles produced in much smaller amounts. Fit and finish is excellent. You know, all the metal work is always real consistent on them. And as you'll see, some really, really cool engineering went into the production of these guns. So we're going to go all the way back to 1869, and we're going to kind of start in 1869. You know, countries all around the world were looking for some form of a repeating rifle. You know, breech loading rifles weren't exactly a new thing. You know, the Hall rifle, I believe, was developed like as early as, what, 1812 or something, I think, the early Hall rifles. So the whole breech loading thing was not exactly new, okay? I mean, I've got a Norwegian Kammerlader right here that was made in 1858. So countries already had, you know, single shot breech loading guns. A lot of them were looking for some form of a repeater, okay? They wanted a rifle that could hold, you know, more shots than a single shot, obviously. They wanted fast follow-up shots. Warfare had really proven that, you know, guns like, you know, you look at the old school like Dreiss needle rifles, or even the Kammerlader here, or you look at the Hall rifle, or even the case of like the Springfield Trapdoor, or other single shot rifles such as the Martini Henry. Very, very good rifles, but single shot, okay? They wanted the ability to have a repeater. And around, you know, the late 1800s, 1860s to 1880s, that whole kind of era, it was a real big point for these militaries to adopt some form of repeating rifle. It was sort of an arms race, okay? So Switzerland's response to that, this particular rifle was actually an M80 or M81 Vetterli, but the Vetterli is sort of their answer to that, okay? And the Vetterli was adopted in 1869 by the Swiss, and it was one of the first, if not the first, repeating rifles ever issued to a military, okay? Really, really cool setup. It's a bolt action, but it uses, I guess, what you would almost consider kind of a Winchester style lifter, okay? The rounds are loaded into a loading gate just like on a lever action rifle, okay? And then there's a magazine tube inside, on the bottom of the barrel, okay? And the rounds are fed in by the spring pressure. And then when you pull the bolt to the rear, the lifter lifts up with the cartridge inside the lifter. And then when you close the bolt, it chambers the round. You lock the bolt in place, you shoot the round. All right, these guns were rimfire, okay, which means that there was a dually opposed firing pin on either side of the front of the bolt that would allow a strike on both sides of the rim of the cartridge. Now, modern shooters, when it comes to the Vetterli rifles, if you want to shoot them, you have to convert the guns to center fire. So there's like a special fixture, you have to drill them out and everything. But the point is, I do have a round of fresh made Vetterli ammo right here, and it is a center fire primer. So you can't just put a center fire cartridge in any of these Vetterlis and it work. They do require modification in order to shoot. So some people have a problem with modifying an original collectible. This is a later version of the Vetterli. Earlier versions had some slightly different cosmetic features, and the Vetterli rifles overwent a ton of different changes. They made so many changes to the Vetterli, improving ergonomics, improving the sights, as like maybe they changed around certain specs in the cartridge a little bit, they would have to like change the sights around a little bit. So all little things like that go into the Vetterli, and even in its own regard, the Swiss Vetterli series of rifles is almost a collectible in of itself, because I want to say that there's probably at least like maybe 13 to 16 different variants, including carbines and things like that. So really, really cool gun. So the ballistics of the 41 Swiss, basically what you're talking is roughly about the speed of an average 44 Magnum, okay? So not a terribly powerful cartridge, but I mean, the guns could hold, I want to say like 12 or 13 rounds, so pretty good capacity. Okay, so you went from a single shot gun to a repeater that held a lot more shots and offered some reasonably good ballistic advantages. The ammunition was light, relatively short, so the tube could hold a pretty decent amount of ammunition, and the ranges that the guns could reach out to, it was pretty much considered a good solid 300-yard gun. If you imagine shooting a 44 Magnum, if you've ever shot a 44 Magnum out of a rifle out to longer distances, you can get them to go about 300. If you know where to aim and everything, if you have your sights, adjusted properly and everything like that. So the original specs of this round, now granted, it may not have been as powerful as some of the rounds that were chambered for the single shot rifles. I mean, obviously Martini Henry or 4570, or something like that. Or heck, even an old school 3-band infield round, just out of a front stuffer, is going to go a long way. So they traded a little bit of the range that the guns were capable of for the ability to be able to have a higher capacity in the gun, carry more ammunition, and have faster follow-up shots. They loved them. They were hugely successful. And the crazy thing is, on the Vetterlis, when you look from the top of the action down, it looks just like a Winchester. So they sort of kind of took that idea from the Winchester. I mean, even the cuts on the receiver and just the look of it has a look of an old Winchester. So it's almost a mix between a bolt-action rifle and a lever-action rifle. Really, really, really cool. And they can be fired with properly made ammunition. So from 1869 to the late 1880s, the Vetterli was in service, and the troops liked them. They did quite well, but they did see a need. From that point, what became obsolete was the smokeless cartridge, the black powder cartridge. So they wanted to go from a black powder cartridge to a higher velocity cartridge, utilizing smokeless powder that they could put into a new rifle design. So let's see, around 1882 or so, Edward Rubin began work on a basically nickel alloy jacketed smokeless round that could achieve some pretty good velocities, okay? And around 1889 to 1890 or so, okay, that's when they finally were able to develop that cartridge in combination with Rudolf Schmidt's action. So that's why this gun, the model 1889, gets its name, the Schmitt Rubin, okay? It's called the Schmitt Rubin because of the designer of the ammunition and the designer of the action, okay? All right, and that's what this is an 1889. Now, this gun holds 12 shots in the magazine, 1 in the chamber, so you get very similar capacity to the older Vetterli. That was one of the things that troops complained about. They're like, hey, we like the idea of having a new gun, but we want it to hold the same amount of rounds as the original Vetterlis, which they loved. So what this gun was intended to be was a marriage of the idea of the higher capacity repeater, but also with a smokeless round. So with the new GP90, not GP11, we're getting to that, GP90 cartridge, with the GP90 they now had greater range, greater power, flatter trajectories, and with the design of the new straight pull bolt action, a troop could be laying in the prone or whatever and not have to reach up and expose himself to work a bolt-action rifle, okay? The whole idea of a straight pull is that you can still work it, maybe not on this long sucker, but the whole idea is they wanted to be able to not have to raise and move so much when they're in the prone, and make shooting in the prone a lot easier too. These guns are beautiful. They are very well made. The stocks are beautiful, and they are just killer guns. I am going to show you the bolt mechanism now. Okay. Here's where some of these guns are going to start to look a little bit similar and a little bit different. So, Colonel Schmitt, I think he was a military man, but Rudolf Schmitt designed the straight pull action. And basically you can clearly see there's a camming surface in the body of the bolt. There's a bolt handle which pushes forward against the camming surfaces in the bolt body and rotate the locking lugs into locking lug recesses within the receiver. Okay. This was a great idea for the time that it was made, guys. You know, it did later kind of become a little bit obsolete, and I'm going to leave this bolt mechanism out so I can show you the differences between the newer bolts and the rifles. And guys, remember, this is going to be a bit of a long video because we haven't even got to handguns yet. So on the 1889, you can see that the locking lugs are located towards the rear of the bolt. Not a problem, but what they found out later was that because of the length of the bolt, the length of where the cartridge is being set off versus the length of where the locking lugs are locking, they found that it was providing a bit of flex, and it was probably not helping accuracy. And the other thing they kind of started to sort of figure out is that this bolt mechanism didn't have to be quite so long. All right, it makes a long bolt throw, and it's a very long bolting mechanism. So in the 1889, in 1889, this was the most advanced military rifle in the world. The Vetterli in 1869 was the most advanced military rifle in the world. So you kind of see where this is going. I mean, they have a history of developing some next level firearms that really made the world take notice. So that's the 1889. The 1889, you know, it was in service for a good little while, but by around 1911, they realized that, you know, due to the other performance that a lot of the other guns, you know, that the countries were adopting, once the Mauser got adopted, the Swiss realized, I believe, that they needed a more high-velocity round than what the ballistics of the GP90 were offering. Because the GP90, you could say, was almost sort of an experiment that they decided just kind of roll in. And it was a great program. I mean, the GP90 had some really good ballistics, but they went to improve the ballistics after the turn of the century. So fast forward to 1911, and that's when the GP11 cartridge was developed. Now, the GP11 cartridge looks like this, all right? And it is a 174 grain Cupro nickel steel jacket bullet, and great cartridge. And you know, I can't remember the velocities off the top of my head, but it is comparable to just about every other surface cartridge of the era. So you're talking, let's just say 30-06, 8mm, 7.62 by 54 rimmed. It's kind of right in there with all the other cartridges of the era, okay? GP11 would go on to, and still is in service, as far as I know, still in service today, okay? It is still produced, and it is a wonderful cartridge. It's got a lot of great ballistic advantage going for it. It's got a great shoulder angle on the shoulder. It's got very generous capacity without sacrificing length of the cartridge, so you get good case capacity. The twist in all of the K31s and K11s is all optimized for very light to heavy bullets, so you shoot a wide variety of different bullets in terms of hand loading. The GP11 was a wonderful cartridge, but they also realized that the older action of the 1889 was a little bit too weak to handle the newer cartridge. So what I'm going to mention here, and what I didn't mention about the GP90 cartridge, is that this is a 7.5 by 55 millimeter, okay? In the older cartridge, it was a 7.5 by 53.5 millimeter. So the original GP90 was 1.5 millimeters shorter. They made the GP90 1.5 millimeters longer so that troops in the field would not accidentally chamber the GP11 cartridge in the older 1889 action. Okay, that would have been very bad. Okay, there were some transitional guns that kind of found their way between the 1889 and the 1911 itself. You know, you'll know those guns by, you notice there's a straight comb stock on the 1889. You'll see guns that were converted to 1911 specs because they'll have a cut on the stock right here where a pistol grip was kind of grafted into the bottom of the stock a little bit to bring the gun up to those specs. And I'm not sure if that really dealt with like a rebarrel or whatever, but the major kind of turning points in the development of Swiss small arms really was between, let's just call it the 1889 to the 1911. There were some transitional guns in between there that were brought up to speed, but those are pretty much your most notable. So getting on to the 1911 was designed to shoot the new GP11 cartridge. So in 1911, they developed the GP11 cartridge along with the 1911 service rifle. Okay, so again, straight pull. This time, a 6-shot magazine instead of a 12-shot magazine. So they halved the capacity, gave the gun a nice light handling characteristic, decreased the weight of the gun a good bit. This gun is definitely very elegant. You know, it has beautifully fitted stock. Again, now we have a pistol grip grafted onto the bottom of the stock. So they went away from the straight comb stock of the Vetterli in the 1889, and they went with the pistol grip grafted on the bottom of the stock just to make the shooting a little bit more comfortable. The bolt mechanism, again, has been changed. All right, let's look at what they changed. So you can see on the 1889 bolt, the locking lugs are way back here. On the 1911, okay, they realized that due to the bolt flex that they were getting in the 1889, and they saw the limitations on the weakness of this bolt, they moved the locking lugs forward to the front of the sleeve to make the distance between where the cartridge is set off and where the lugs lock up closer, to limit the bolt flex, and in their minds they were increasing the strength of the action. The throw of the bolt is about the same. So it got about maybe an inch shorter. Okay, going from the 1889 to the 1911 infantry rifle. In addition to the full-size infantry rifle, the Swiss in 1911 also developed a carbine version. This is a private series carbine, and this is a carbine version of the same infantry rifle. So the bolt, again, is the same as the infantry rifle, but just the gun is in a shorter configuration. You can see the Swiss issued muzzle caps. This is a brass muzzle cap, okay, and leather sling, which in many cases they're issued with very nice leather sling. This is a pristine example of a private series K11 carbine. We're going to kind of fast forward a bit. The 1911 series of carbines and rifles, they did quite well. You know, they held up really good. They're accurate. Troops loved them. But, you know, later on, they did see that with the development of the K31 service rifle, they really wanted to bring all of this stuff kind of full circle and bring it kind of home for them. So what they did with the K31 was develop a much shorter throw of bolt, a much more encapsulated and small bolt mechanism with a lot more efficiency and a lot of strength. And they really just kind of developed the perfect straight pull rifle. By the time 1931 rolled around, they had this figured out. So in 1931, enter the K31. Okay, and the K31 served Switzerland from 1931 to 1958. And the K31 was one of the rifles that was issued that was always a carbine. Okay, Carabiner of 1931, K31. It was always a carbine. So there's not like a rifle version of the K31 and then a carbine version of the K31. The K31 was designed to bridge the gap between the K11 and the 1911. But wait, there's more, okay? So we look at the bolt mechanism on the 1911, okay? We look at the bolt mechanism on the K31. Now you're talking, okay? You got a nice short throw, and what did they do? They located the locking lugs all the way up to the front of the sleeve, which means a lot less bolt flex and a lot better inherent strength. You still got a camming surface, an outer sleeve, which locks the outer locking lugs into the receiver, and the bolt is relocated to the inside. The actual bolt is a cylindrical bolt that is housed inside of the sleeve. Pretty genius, okay? So instead of having this big crazy thing sticking out and making all of that extra space necessary, now going from the 1911 series to the K31 series, the whole design now comes full circle. This represents the apex of Swiss military bolt action technology. Really, really next level stuff. I mean, in 1931, again, guys, this is the most advanced rifle in the world at the time in workmanship, quality of materials. Guys, they really had it going on with these Swiss rifles. Wonderful accuracy, great triggers that break at about 3.5 pounds. It's a 2-stage trigger. They are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rifles. I cannot say that enough. That's as far down the rifle rabbit hole as we're going to go. The Swiss K31 served from 1931 to 1958. In 1958, it was replaced by a semi-auto rifle, and then of course around 1990, the PE57 or STG58. I guess depending on which camp you're in terms of the way you designate that rifle. That rifle was also in 7.5 Swiss. It was replaced by 5.56 rifle in 1990. Basically, like you look at the SIG 550 series, 551, pretty much that type of rifle. So yeah, the Swiss have always made some beautiful guns. We'll discuss one more rifle. This is a K31/43. This was an earlier attempt at a marksman's type rifle or sniper rifle, if you will. It's got a little flip up 2.8 power scope on the side. All right, you've still got the iron sights on the K31. And look at this, you got this little tangent that slides up for your elevation. And then of course inside the optic, the crosshair moves, which is really cool. And you could flip this out of the way and you've still got a standard K31 with iron sights. Still loads with stripper clips. Really, really killer gun. Awesome. So as if this isn't cool enough with the K31 and having the little, basically 2.5 power optic on the side, around the mid-50s, the Swiss also built a dedicated sniper rifle around the K31 action called the ZKF 55, I believe, okay? And I wish I had one of those here to show you, but I do not. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that particular sniper rifle, but that is pretty much the most advanced military sniper rifle ever made. They are killer. It used a special K31 receiver with a slant to it so that the brass could clear the optic. And they were beautifully produced guns. They did not make a ton of them, but if I can ever get a hold of one to do a video with, I will try to get one to show you guys. They are wonderful, wonderful guns. And these sniper rifles here, the 31/42s and 43s, are really cool guns too. So there were some sniper variants. As any military rifle, you'd expect there to be some sniper variants. That pretty much covers Swiss rifle technology from 1869 up through 1958. It covers a wide range of different technologies and how they really kind of went full frontal with this. So really, really cool. The Swiss have always made gorgeous firearms, and it is just so cool to see, have all this history on the table, to see the development of small arms in Switzerland through all those years. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clear the rifles out of the way, and we're going to look at some handguns, and we're going to look at how the handguns have developed in Switzerland from around 1882 pretty much up through now. So let's do that. All right, guys, now we're going to take a look at some handgun development with the Swiss, and we've got a few newer guns that may not necessarily be Swiss military, but we're still going to show them to you, and then we've got some nice vintage pieces as well. Some of the guns here are from my collection, and some of them the guys from Edelweiss brought down for demonstrative purposes for us to show you, which is very kind of them. I'm nerding out here. I love this so much, in case you guys can't tell. I'm relishing in this moment. I love talking about Swiss firearms. I will never turn down a chance to talk about Swiss guns. All right. So we're going to go back to 1882. Okay, around, the late 1800s, yes, a lot of countries were looking for some form of repeater. They were looking for, ways to move forward with black powder pistols, because remember, smokeless powder was not developed until 1890 or so. Hopefully I'm right there. 1891, I think, was when smokeless powder was developed. So, guys, there was this huge, sort of renaissance of firearms development around the late 1800s. And it's what I like to call, whether it's correct or not, I like to call it the transitional period, where militaries were transitioning from black powder to smokeless, and from single-shot repeaters or single-shot rifles to repeaters, which is really cool. So the Swiss were no different. They wanted, in this case, a revolver. So they had 7.5 black powder ammunition, so small bore round. And in 1882, they developed this revolver, okay? This is a slightly later version of the revolver. Early ones, early model 1882s had plastic grips, and then later on, to just ease production, they were produced with wooden grips, okay? No safety. You've just got a loading gate back here. You flip it, turn, load the gun, flip it back up, the loading gate, and then you've got single action and double action functionality. We've got a nice, beautiful, original leather holster here. Look at that nice worn holster. Isn't that cool? And then we've also got an accessory pouch that would have, you know, things like extra ammunition, cleaning bottles, and all that kind of stuff. So that, I mean, guys, this is so cool. These guns were actually still in Swiss inventory up through the 70s, oddly enough. They were phased out eventually, but a lot of these guns still remained in garrison use, service use, all the way up through the 70s in some cases. So really, really cool. But again, this time of firearms development, you'll see a lot of various countries that'll have some form of black powder revolver, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, now that smokeless powder's out, everybody's rushing to try to get, you know, some type of auto-loading smokeless powder pistol, okay? And that is pretty much where the entire world was looking at. In fact, this isn't related to this video, but I'm going to show you the gun that did that. Mauser broom handle. Okay, so when the Mauser broom handle came out, this was some next level stuff, okay? 1896, all right? You've got the C96 Mauser broom handle, and this was the pistol that everybody was like, holy crap, we've got to get a better pistol to compete with the Mauser broom handle, because it was an auto-loading gun, had a shoulder stock, it kind of bridged the level between carbine and rifle. This was some next level thinking in 1896. This was the most advanced firearm in the world in 1896. Guys, the only screw in this entire gun holds the grips on. What does that tell you? The genius that designed this gun. So the Mauser broom handle and guns like it, okay, now let's be fair. In 1911, John Browning made the 1911 service pistol, which, you know, it came from other variants of guns before that, but for the most part, countries were just scrambling to come up with an auto-loading, smokeless powder pistol that was just going to be awesome, right? So in 1900, Switzerland adopted the Luger pistol. A lot of people don't know this, okay? This is maybe not common knowledge to some people, but this is a gorgeous Swiss Luger. This one belongs to my wife. I bought it for her, and she told me she loved Swiss Lugers, or she loved Lugers in general. And so I got her this gun. And she loves it, and it's a very beautiful piece of artwork. I mean, this gun is as much art as it is anything else. And it's got a grip safety on the back. That's one distinct feature that you're going to see on the Swiss Luger over the German Lugers. We're going to get to German Lugers in just a second. And you've got a toggle, okay, type of action. So that toggle, when the gun's fired, drives up and to the rear and pulls the bolt back. So it's toggling on two different axes back here. These guns are fixed barrel, very accurate, extremely accurate pistols. And they do possess a manual safety, 8-shot magazine. This one has a nice original wooden butt plate on it. I think that's wood. It's just real stained and oily. But man, what a sweet gun. And this one's got the original Swiss rig with it. And the Switzerland adopted the Luger in 1900. When people think Lugers, they think Germany. They think the Germans, because the Luger is synonymous with World War II and with Germany. So a lot of people don't know that's how the Luger got its name in Germany, the P08. The P08 was not developed, or adopted rather, I should say, in Germany until 1908. The Swiss had it 8 years before the Germans did. So we're talking about Switzerland, not Germany, but I do have an artillery Luger that's made in Germany. This one has a slot on the back for shoulder stock, and it's got tangent sights. Again, getting onto the whole shoulder stock auto-loading pistol thing. Oh, wait a minute, what do we see there? See, just like the Mauser broom handles. They made Lugers with tangent rear sights, just like the broom handle, and with the slot on the back. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the shoulder stock for this particular pistol, but you see you got the longer barrel, You've got the adjustable sights, and what a cool little personal defense weapon. I mean, this would have been a really nice thing to have. And this one is dated 1917, so a nice 100-year-old Luger pistol. This one is a P08. This is German. I just want to show it off because we happen to have it here. So getting back to Switzerland, I felt like discussing a bit of small arms development around the turn of the century is important to understand why Switzerland went the route they did. So they were still issuing 1882 ordnance revolvers, obviously pretty late, but by the time 1900 came along, the new Luger was their primary service pistol. The Luger served Switzerland from 1900 to around 1949 officially. Now, Lugers were issued as late as, like I said, the 70s. They still remained in inventory as late as the 70s until they were finally considered obsolete and phased out and sold off as surplus and things like that. But in 1949, all right, enter, okay, going down to the next Swiss pistol. Guys, I'm telling you right now, this is one of the finest military pistols ever made right here. Okay, this is a P210. This one happens to be a -4, which this particular model was intended for border police. This was part of the first 500 guns sent to the federal border police in Switzerland. And I want to say that was around 1951, I believe, or 1952 when that contract was fulfilled. So this pistol was adopted in 1949. And this one served through 1974, 1975, I want to say. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful service pistol. Again, single stack, just like the Luger. Okay, so still a single stack, 8-shot mag. So not a huge, crazy, higher capacity mag. Still in a single stack range. You wouldn't really see a double stack mag come into play until really like modern days. But just a single stack magazine. But beautifully fitted. I mean, that thing just feels like it's riding on glass. It's it's just awesome. Now, we did do a video with this exact pistol, range video. So if you want to learn more about the 210, we went into some of the nuts and bolts and talked about it and shot it a little bit if you'd like to check that video out. But they are very high quality guns. You can see the hammer will not fall. It has a magazine disconnect safety, and it's a heel magazine release, okay? So the hammer will not drop without the magazine, and the safety off obviously, but without magazine in it. Has manual safety right there, up and down. Real simple pistol, but beautiful. Really well made, very accurate, very lightweight. They point real naturally. They got really nice sights on them. Unfortunately, they are highly collectible, and as a result, they're very expensive pistols. This represents probably one of the most collectible service pistols in the world. When you look at all of the different antique and vintage service pistols that are out there and being sold on the collector's market, this is one of the most expensive ones out there, and for good reason. I mean, they really are just beautiful pistols. I cannot say that enough. But Switzerland, man, they've always gotten it right. I just love it. Their firearms are just so great, So getting on from the 1882 ordnance revolver to the Luger in 1900 to 1949, 1949 to 1975, you got the P210. All right, now we're going to fast forward to the next service pistol. After the 210 was wasn't really phased out. I mean, they were used pretty late. I don't know when exactly they eventually just completely phased out the 210, but it's not an obsolete pistol even by today's standards. So it wouldn't surprise me if some 210s were still floating around in some holsters in Switzerland today. Okay, so I'm not going to say they're completely out of service, but in 1975, the new Sig Sauer P220. This is a West German produced example, and this one is a 45, but the basic gun design that they took on was a 9mm 220. This one, like I said, is a 45 ACP, so it's not the exact gun, but I wanted to have it as a representative example just to show you the type of gun that they developed. Okay, so in 1975, this would have been the Swiss service pistol that would have been in use. Obviously, some slight different changes, and being a slightly different caliber, 9mm, what do you mean slightly? It is a different caliber, but being in a different caliber, these pistols are wonderful, okay? This one happens to be a 45, and I do love it. This is an early gun in and of itself. I think I dated this gun back to like maybe 89, 90. So this is a West German, early one, which is really cool. This is one for my collection. And then I also broke out a Sig Sauer P226, just to give you an example of a 226. Now, I'm pretty sure like some of the Vatican's guards, might have used the 226 in service a bit here and there. There's probably a few of them floating around, but in terms of handguns, Switzerland, kind of after the 220 was developed and getting into like modern times, they kind of just went all over the place. I mean, they issued anything from 220s to Glocks, probably some 226s here and there. A ton of different things. And also another gun that saw and has seen some limited issue in Switzerland is the Spinx SPD. Sorry. This is sort of a high-speed, awesome CZ75 clone, but is not, and it's Swiss-made, but not quite, okay? It is kind of its own animal. This particular pistol utilizes a combination of polymer and alloy in the lower to cut down on weight, and to really just give it a really nice weight distribution as well. And these pistols are wonderful. Double single action, and it's sort of a Swiss-made, kind of high-end CZ75 clone. All right, so this is going full circle, all the way from 1882 service revolver, right? This was the hot thing around the turn of the century, all the way to this. Really, really drastic change, okay? And of course, this is a 9mm. That pretty much points you guys in the right direction when it comes to Swiss pistols and rifles. For obvious reasons, we don't have, all the different machine guns, and we don't have grenades, and we don't have tanks, and things like that to show off. But in terms of small arms, hopefully you guys learned something from this video. I had a ton of fun making this video. I love Swiss weaponry. I always have. I've been collecting for a long time. I've worked hard and tried my best to put together the most detailed list that I can with what I have available without having to go rob a museum. This is about the closest thing that I can do to give you guys an idea of these guns. And I do want to make a just brief statement here at the end of this video that I feel is important to mention. A lot of people have been giving me grief, like, oh, well, Eric, why do you promote all of these old guns? Because you're just going to clue people into how good they are, and then they're going to get real expensive, and people are going to go buy them all up. Well, that's a real selfish thing to think. If you're one of those people that are mad because I promote these cool old guns, just because I want to share with the world my love for a lot of these older firearms, that's a real selfish thing. Think about it, guys. The point that we make these videos for, why I show off these old guns, is because one reason is I want to honor Swiss military heritage. I want to show off their military arms because it's cool. And two, I like to showcase the military heritage of countries all around the world, not just us. I like to show off different firearms from around the world because from an engineering perspective and as somebody who likes firearms, you kind of owe it to yourself to learn a little bit of everything. So don't be so closed-minded to think, oh, well, I only want my whatever, my M1 Garand, and that's the only gun I need. I think for me, my fascination with military firearms from around the world has been from an engineering perspective and just really being able to appreciate what the need was they were trying to meet, what they did to meet that need, and the technology that they used to get there. And if you look at the way that equation is the same for every country who develops a new weapon system, that process is the same. Identifying a problem, talking about what they need to do, what they want to integrate into the solution, and then putting in action points to get it done and to develop the solution for the need at hand. Every country has to undergo that process. And what I think is so clever is that Switzerland, they really, really came up with some clever ideas, and they did it beautifully. They executed everything wonderfully, and they were made wonderfully. They were made with pride. And anybody that can't appreciate that, I can't help you. But they are beautiful guns. Pick one up, and you'll see. If you ever just pick up a gun, look at it. They are so beautifully made, and you have to appreciate the men and women that built these things because they were made with pride, and that's the thing. That's something that I feel is a little bit gone in the world these days. You don't really see things made with literal pride and love like they used to be. And when you pick up a lot of these older guns, you can tell they were made by people who really, really loved what they were doing. And you can tell that the love was built into the guns. I know that's a corny thing to say, but it's true. And I've always felt that. I can feel it when I pick one of these guns up, that you can tell that the people that made them, They loved what they did, and they wanted to make the best possible tools for the defense of their nation, and they did. So, guys, we hope you learned something today, and we really appreciate you watching today's video. I know this was a long one. I know it's a lot of talking points, but maybe you'll walk away from this video understanding a little bit about Swiss rifle technology and pistol technology, and maybe come away a little bit better informed, and maybe with a little bit more respect for the firearms as a whole that you may not have known before. Maybe now you do. So, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you've lasted this long, I know it's a long one, but thank you very much. We appreciate all the support that we get from you folks on Patreon, all of the folks that support us through programs like ManCans, as well as if you buy shirts over on Forge from Freedom, all of those funds go to support the channel. We graciously appreciate all of you that do that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. Let me know in the comment section below, is there something that we didn't include that you'd like to see? We'll try to get a hold of it and showcase it for you. So thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time.